Today we're going to talk about variance, but primarily with multiple transaction types. We've had issues here in the office. We've talked to a lot of people that they do a physical count, but then their numbers still aren't right. A lot of reasons for that is because they have quantities on layaway, on order, other special transaction types, on hold, that sort of thing. So that's what we're going to talk about today. It's a little bit of an extension of what we did last week. But I want to welcome you again to Keystroke Live. Do this same time, same place. Next week is going to be Michael Gibb, so he always has some interesting stuff for everybody, so please join us next week. But let's get into the meat of this. The thing you need to do before you do a variance, you need to think about what transaction types you have that adjust primarily both the quantity on hand and either allocated or layaway. Usually, these are the ones that you need to maintain. You need to clean up if they're not valid, that sort of thing. If you do layaways, what do you do with items that are on layaway? Do they stay on the shelf until someone comes in and pays things off that they might be counted? Or do you put them in a special area someplace that you're not going to count? You know, that thing's already sold, so you're not going to count that. Same thing with sales orders. You know, if somebody orders something, do you put that in a special place? Is it going to be counted? On holds is one of those transaction types that does adjust the quantity on hand by default, but it doesn't adjust allocated or layaway. So even on holds, you're going to want to clean those up. So take an accounting kind of what types of transactions you use. Now, this is really what we talked about last week, so I'm not going to go into a whole lot of details, but you want to maintain all these transactions first. So you want those cleaned up before you do an actual physical count. Remove invalid transactions. We talked about using the del trans function for that. Make sure you have correct numbers in the allocated and layaway fields so that, you know, you've cleaned up old orders, old layaways. That uses the del util function. And then you want to adjust your variance parameters accordingly. So let's look at this in Keystroke. This is our variance parameters. So if, let's take a look here at Keystroke. Remember, variance is in Database Manager under the Special menu and Variance. We're just going to do session 1. Let's take a look at these parameters. These are the things that are really important before you even start your variance or start your counting. You want to determine what your entry field is. Most cases, that's probably product code. The include allocated in your quantity on hand or include layaway in your quantity on hand. Let's see if we can expand that a little bit so we can read the whole thing. There we go. You want to make sure, did you determine, okay, if I have things on layaway, where are those things? Are they in a special place that I'm going to count? Or are they put away somewhere? If they're put away that you're not going to count them, that are on layaway, you probably don't want to include your layaway in the quantity on hand because those items are set aside. They're not going to be counted. They're already on a transaction. You're not going to worry about it. Sales orders, on the other hand, they just stay on the shelf until everything's ready, and then they gather it all up. So you may want to include your quantity allocated in your quantity on hand. Now, these parameters have to be set before you start putting things on your variance. You can't change it in the middle. It's really going to be confusing. Now, these other parameters are important to take a look at. Do you want to base your variance based on last cost or average cost? Do you want to default the physical quantity to 1? So when you add an item, usually by scanning it, it's going to automatically just put a 1 in there. So if you can scan, it's going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to always increment that. Do you want Keystroke to stop and confirm the physical quantity? That means when you enter an item, it goes to the column for the physical quantity and to allow you to put it there, to put a number there, or do you want to confirm the variance quantity? Usually you're not going to do both, and that usually this also is just if you're manually entering items one at a time. The variance does have a serial number feature that when you count things, if you want Keystroke to help you determine, hey, I counted 5 of these. They're serialized items. Oh, goodness, you have 6 serial numbers or you have 4 serial numbers. Unless this is checked, Keystroke is going to give you a message that says there aren't enough serial numbers, there's too many serial numbers, do you want to fix this? And that's great if you have a lot of serialized items. On your line entry, do you want to merge same items? Depends on how you're doing it. I like no message, no beep. You really want to consider, if you're a big store, using data collectors. That's where a lot of this up here will not be checked, and you're just going to import. This check open variances on post. This is new in version 8. This, if you have 3 different computers, say, counting things, hopefully they're counting different things. You don't want all 3 computers counting your green widgets. But in case you do, or in case that may happen, you can have Keystroke warn or merge in these items. It will look for an item on another variance. You don't ever want that green widget on 3 different variances at the same time, because the last one posted is going to win. So you're not going to have correct quantities. So you only want an item on a single variance at one time. Do you want to post items with a 0 variance? 0 variance means Keystroke says you have 5. You've gone out there, you've counted 5. That means the variance, or the difference between what Keystroke says and what you've counted, is 0. Posting items with 0 variance is kind of nice because you have a record that, yes, we counted this on this day. Keystroke said we had 5, we counted 5. It also will update the inventory record that says, yes, last counted date, it was counted on this date. And then we have a detail box setting. Well, let's go back to the PowerPoint here. We've talked a lot about these parameters, you know, whether you want to include allocated or layaway, last cost, average cost. We've talked about all of this. The checking open variances on post is a great feature if you have a big store and a lot of people counting in different variances. So let's talk a little bit more about doing the variance. All this stuff we've talked about is just preliminary. cleaning up your transactions, making sure that your allocated and layaway quantities are accurate, determining whether you want to include those quantities in your quantity on hand when you're doing a variance. Some of the reasons for doing a variance, this time of year it's primarily just a physical inventory count. They do it once a year. Everybody just looks forward to it so much. It is a lot of work, but it does help you keep track of what's going on in your business. Variance could also be used for things like theft, breakage, spoilage, or even internal use. Purchasing, some people use it for purchasing. It's really not recommended though. We have a great purchase module, tracks things so much better than the variance might. Variance also allows you a way to document that things were counted. There's great reports. The variance can link to accounting, so it can adjust the value of your inventory in your accounting package. Keystroke does have step-by-step instructions in our help file. Please take a look at those. We also have them in a PDF format. Another great feature that you can do with the variance, you can save a snapshot of your inventory for the end of the month, the end of the year. Let me show you that feature. That's kind of cool. So let's take a look at Keystroke here. We're going to include everything in our quantity on hand here. And I'm going to do an autofill. I want to autofill everything but bulk and service items. So I'm going to autofill. I skipped my service items. This is what Keystroke says I have. Okay, I am going to post this right now, and we've talked about this in the past, but just as a reminder, if you don't have anything in the physical quantity column of one or more items, when you go to post a transaction or a variance, it asks you, what do you want to do? Do you want to remove these items? Yeah, if you're just doing partial counts, something like that, sure. You can set them to 0. So if you're doing a full inventory count, but there's still items on here that you have not counted, usually that means they don't exist. So you want to set those to 0. Or you can just leave it blank. This is where you're getting a snapshot of what Keystroke says you have when you did posting this variance. So in this case, I'm just going to leave it blank, and this is going to be a posted variance. I can report on it, but the items aren't changed. So I am going to proceed to post these, and my screen's going to disappear. The thing that's nice about this, you can run a report, probably a transactions report, or actually probably if we bring it up on the screen, we can bring up and do a displayed report. Let's see, which one has the, okay. Here we go. The detailed quantity on hand cost total. This basically is just like running an inventory database report with your cost. So we're going to do this one today, and it basically is going to show you the cost total of what my inventory is right now when I posted it. This is great because you can do this snapshot without, and just save it so you can go, okay, at the end of the month, this is what Keystroke said I had. Real easy, makes it a great way to keep track of what Keystroke says without having to go back to a backup. So it's a great tool that you can use, and do that once a month, at least at the end of the year. Variances do have a little title description up at the top. I showed you the autofill. You can include bulk or service if you want to, but in most cases, you're not tracking the quantity on hand, so it should be 0. If you're in the middle of a variance and you're doing a lot of counts, save it on a regular basis. You don't want to add, 200 lines and then have your power glitch and lose your counts on all 200 items. If you have a big store, I really encourage you to use data collectors. There are businesses out there that can come in and do this for you and import it into Keystroke. If you're a really big store, you could purchase data collectors. They're also great for receiving purchasing, receiving things from your vendors and purchasing. They can be used for like a gift registry type thing. There's all kinds of things that they can be used for. So consider getting those if you have a big store, and it does save a lot of time. When you're doing a full physical count, autofill your variance either right before or right after you've entered all of your counts. That way you will get the items on your variance that aren't counted. Those are usually items that are out of stock, and you want those to probably be 0 if you don't have any. So as I just showed you the feature on the unconfirmed or not counted items, you can remove those. Not really recommended unless you had intended on doing a full count and you only did a partial count and you just want to get rid of the rest of them. You can set them to 0 primarily for your not counted items. Leave it blank for your quantity on hand snapshot, or cancel to go back. And if you have these unconfirmed or not counted items, you do have to post it again to finish the whole process. So I'm just going to open this up for questions and kind of scroll through some of the things here. Does anybody have any questions on how to deal with your variance when you have multiple transaction types? Any questions at all? This is a powerful tool that you can use in Keystroke. A lot of businesses do variances on a regular basis. They count things, they go, okay, today's Tuesday, I must be counting my red widgets. Today's Thursday, I'm counting my green widgets, whatever. Variance is a powerful tool. It gives you a record, but you do need to be cautious if you're doing any special transactions that, like on holds, layaways, sales orders, or other special transaction types. Those, you need to account for those and set your parameters accordingly. Any questions? All right. Thanks, everybody. Next week will be First Wednesday with Michael Gebb, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Bye-bye.